Western military leaders meeting in Germany have failed to reach agreement on allowing German-made battle tanks to be sent to Ukraine. Going into the talks, Kiev was optimistic that Berlin would give approval for its modern Leopard-2 vehicles to be delivered to the battlefield. Those hopes, however, were dashed after the German defence minister said his country was still weighing up the decision.
The question of whether Germany will send tanks to Ukraine took centre stage at Ramstein Air Base. But instead of giving the green light, Germany's new defence minister just said that it is up to the Chancellor to make that call. In the event of a negative decision, nothing needs to be done. But in the event of a positive decision, we have to move quickly, because it is then a matter of training, checking the Leopard tanks and the like. That's why this morning I ordered my ministry to examine the stocks of the different types of Leopard tanks, both in our own forces and in the industry. A stance that has led to criticism, including from other partners who want to supply the same kind of battle tanks to Ukraine. Poland and Finland, for example, are willing to send them to Ukraine fast, but also need the green light from Berlin. Despite the dilemma of our tanks exports, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had warm words for Germany, a country that he called a reliable ally going forward.
Germany has contributed a lot to this campaign. From the very beginning, we saw them cycle in air defense capability, the Gepards, the Patriots most recently, IRIS-T. They've stepped up and offered to provide the mortars. They will provide those mortars and conduct the training on those platforms.
But for many, including these protesters who gathered outside the Chancellery late Friday, Berlin is dragging its feet when it comes to sending tanks.
Our chief political correspondent Nina Haase sent this update from that defence ministers' meeting in Ramstein.
The pressure on Germany to give its green light to Leopard-2 combat tank deliveries remains high after this meeting at Ramstein. Some observers are saying that the fact that the new German defense minister announced that he's now taking stock of what Germany would theoretically have in terms of Leopard-2 capabilities can be seen as a sign that the German government is almost there. Boris Pistorius announced that a decision will come very soon in the next days or weeks. Now, one thing came out of Ramstein very clearly: the new man in the job is much better at communicating publicly than his predecessor was, something that cannot be underestimated at a time when Western unity and Western resolve is being tested like it is because of Russia's aggression.
It's Nina Haase. Well, Roderich Kiesewetter is a retired senior field officer with the German Defence Forces and now a member of Parliament for the opposition Christian Democratic Party. I asked for his reaction to Berlin's continuing indecision.
It's really horrifying because two messages are very clear. First, that the German defense minister has had no sheet of paper with stock taking. This is unbelievable. And second, that the American defense minister did not mention Germany very clear, but then after the first question about the German leading power, he answered, what German leadership? Germany is a reliable partner. So this in the diplomatic field is really a, very outspoken criticism. So I believe there is a lot of disappointment and we are losing time. Ukraine is running out of personnel, is running out of weapons. Every day counts. They are bleeding. And I believe that the European credibility is drying out.
OK, we're going to come back to that point. But I just want to get something clear. Has Chancellor Scholz stated clearly why he is so reluctant to send these tanks, or indeed to allow other countries to send them?
No, not at all. It's a communication disaster. It would have been much better to clearly state that Germany is reluctant and will not deliver at all. This would be a clear message. But now the decision is postponed again and again. And there is not only disappointment, it is also a sign and signal to Russia that the European and American allies are not unified. And second, that Germany is taking United States hostage. They only will deliver if also the United States might deliver. But the United States have delivered 150 infantry fighting vehicles. So if Europe would deliver 150 Leopard tanks, then this would be a clear message for a combined warfare. But this signal did not come due to German reluctance.
And do you draw the line at tanks, or would you send, I don't know, why not fighter jets?
Well, Germany never would send fighter jets, and they hampered last year in March a Polish idea to deliver MiG-29 via Ramstein. This was stopped by the Chancellery nearly a year ago. But there is a need also, we should bring all in what is needed, not submarines, but also aircrafts and fighter jets, for example, MiG-29. The Americans are already training pilots on F-16, so we should start with it, but probably without Germany. The new Europe will be more Eastern, more Scandinavian, more decisive, more really also deterrent and more modern, but probably without Germany. Paris has understood the message because Macron has changed his rhetorics last week. He said now Ukraine must win, must have a victory, but Germany, you will never find these words from the Chancellor.
So how concerned then are you that German foot-dragging over this issue is undermining its reputation as a reliable partner, regardless of what the US Defense Secretary said in public today?
The German reliability is already undermined in view of our eastern neighbors. And it's also a question of time. We have on Sunday the French-German summit that also France will find some clear words. But we could not and should not do this due to Russia, because this would be then again a wrong signal. But the responsible author of these wrong signals is Germany, and it's not our allies. And the target, Ukraine, is really becoming a sacrifice if we don't stand together and deliver everything which is needed.
Germany's own armed forces are acknowledged to be in need of updating, one of the jobs the new defence minister has set himself. How depleted would sending German tanks to Ukraine leave the Bundeswehr?
Not at all, because the German armed forces have Leopard-2 in the model version A6 and A7, and the European endeavor would focus on A4, and these are in 10 of our European Leopard states, as well as in the German industry. The German industry is delivering 27 Leopard-2 model A4 by summer to Czech Republic and Slovakia. And these could be changed and moved to, for example, to Ukraine. This would be half a battalion, and the others could be delivered from the stocks of the armed forces, but so they are not employed.
As you see it, it's eminently doable. Thank you so much for outlining that so clearly to us, Roderich Kiesewetter of the CDU.
Thank you. Good evening.
Well, DW also spoke to US Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, who was a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Does he agree with the criticism that Germany's taking?
I don't think actually it's a fair criticism to say that Germany has dragged its feet just because, you know, somebody in the process has said, well, you ought to send them that, and you ought to send it now. There's a calculation that goes into this that a lot of people don't pay attention to. As I said, you know, what weapons are in their stockpile? How does this affect their own national security needs? And then always remember that there are a number of goals in Ukraine, but there are two that are primary. Number one, we want to preserve a sovereign, democratic Ukraine. We want Russia to be defeated, not to be successful in trying to take over Ukraine. But number two, we do not want a direct conflict between the US and or NATO and Russia. We want to avoid that direct conflict. And, you know, you have to take that into account. And that's part of Germany's argument is, you know, what is that escalatory point at which it runs a higher risk of getting into that direct conflict? So I think people who just look at this and go, gosh, Germany, they should send them whatever they want, whenever they want, not even think about it. You know, I don't go down that road. It is a more difficult calculation than I think a lot of people are willing to admit.
That's US Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. We can get more now from Raphael Loss, who's coordinator for pan-European data projects at the European Council on Foreign Relations here in Berlin. Welcome to DW. What do you make of Germany's position on these tanks?
I think, first of all, we have to recognize that the meeting at Ramstein Air Base today produced a significant upgrade to Ukraine's fighting capability by new pledges from the United States, various northern and eastern European countries. Unfortunately, Germany does not belong in that club today. We see continued foot dragging from the German government to produce a decision on the delivery of Leopard 2 heavy tanks to Ukraine, be it from German stockpiles or from allied country stockpiles that would require German permission to re-export them to Ukraine.
And why do you think the German Chancellor is so reluctant?
We've heard numerous explanations coming out of the Chancellery in recent days, weeks, months, because it really has been an issue for months in the German political context, and other voices from across Europe have been chiming in increasingly vocally. But some of these revolve around escalation concerns, some of these revolve around historical memory, some of them revolve around the pictures that German tanks going toe-to-toe with Russian-produced tanks would produce. But all of these, I think, have been disproven, have been debated at length, and with international support from Germany's European allies and transatlantic allies, I think politically I think there is a coalition of countries that is coming together on this question, and Germany is holding that back.
OK, but I want to ask you why Germany is holding that back, what's behind it. But what you've said is that the reasons have come out of the Chancellery, but we have never heard, as far as I can tell, we have never had the Chancellor come out and say, this is why we have to take our time. Why is that? Why is it happening around him rather than us hearing from him?
You're exactly right. We really haven't received a good explanation for why this is taking so long. Why even preparatory steps for taking a decision to produce a European coalition on this question haven't been taken months, weeks earlier. Olaf Scholz likes to emphasize that he does not want Germany to go it alone on supplying Ukraine with any kinds of new military gear. For the longest time, this was interpreted as meaning that Germany would act in the European and the NATO context, and then it was sort of scaled back to other countries would need to supply Western-produced heavy armored vehicles as well, and then was scaled back to, well, these heavy armored vehicles would need to be tanks, Western-produced tanks. And now it seems to mean that actually the United States has to take the lead on supplying Ukraine with M1 Abrams tanks, and then Germany is happy to go along. So this is really a confusing political picture that looks like an onion where you sort of peel off layer by layer, and we're not sure what is at the center of that political onion that Olaf Scholz is calling his chancellery and his political reasoning on this question.
OK, good talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Raphael Loss from the European Council on Foreign Relations.